Hello everyone, welcome back to another Project Gladiator weather forecast. Today I'll be covering the weather for August 28th of 2023. Currently, as for severe weather specifically, we don't really have all that much of a strong severe potential. However, we do have a marginal threat for a large portion of the southern United States, including parts of North Carolina, South Carolina, northern Georgia, southern Alabama, southern Mississippi, and southern Louisiana, and parts of southeastern Tennessee. This is likely not really going to be all that organized or all that strong in intensity. As for threats, we don't really have all that much of a tornado potential or all that much of a hail potential, but we do have a 5% wind threat for this marginal threat location. Taking a look at our 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook, this is going to be the primary focus of today's forecast, actually. I won't really go into all that much detail about the severe weather for today, as it is relatively weak overall, and I will be mainly focusing on our tropical weather for today and what Tropical Storm Idalia is going to be doing over the next couple of days. In fact, it is expected to become a hurricane very, very soon, actually. I think later today, if not overnight, it should be upgraded to a Category 1 hurricane. And you can see that the warning cone has had some changes applied to it. We now expect Hurricane Idalia to impact as a major hurricane, which is Category 3 or above. I think it is going to be mostly a Category 3. And I will definitely explain to you why this is and why I was originally wrong before this major hurricane status was added to this warning cone. But overall, we are expected to definitely see some major upscale growth as expected with Tropical Storm Idalia over the next couple of days. Hurricane Idalia is still expected to impact as a Category 3 hurricane on 7 a.m. of Wednesday. Before I get into the depth of Hurricane Idalia, if we go back here, you can see that with Hurricane Franklin here, that I haven't really been focusing all too much with the last couple of days. However, you can see it here, and you can see that it is a fairly large system. It is a very large system. It's also a very powerful system. I think it's currently a Cat 3 to maybe a Cat 4 hurricane right now. And it is triggering some rip current and some high surf across the coastal regions of South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe even into the Chesapeake Bay in parts of Virginia, maybe even up to Delaware. I think Delaware might be a little bit of a stretch. However, over a section of the eastern United States, mainly South Carolina and North Carolina, we are expected to see some deadly rip current and surf across this particular location. So if you do live in the affected areas and you do have plans that are going to be out in the waters today, I don't really recommend getting into those waters, as it could potentially become deadly. So do change your plans if you have any, as again, this could potentially be deadly if you go out into waters like this. Taking a look at our radar Omega model, starting off with our temperature and mainly focusing on the temperature of the waters in the Gulf of Mexico and the water temperature that Hurricane Idalia will have access to over the next couple of days for its growth as it moves towards Florida. You can see if I pull out our tool here to measure the temperatures, you can see that we are expected to have intense heat of this water here. Temperatures in the 80s, the 85s, and the 86s and the 84s, that is going to be very, very hot Gulf of Mexico waters. That's going to be extremely hot, and that's going to provide tons of fuel for Hurricane Idalia to use over the next couple of days. In fact, Hurricane Ian did have similar water temperatures to this. However, it was moving much, much slower across the Gulf of Mexico, giving it more time to develop, and Hurricane Idalia is moving much faster across the Gulf of Mexico. So it doesn't have as much time to develop with this intense water heat. However, this intense water heat will still definitely allow for rapid upscale growth in these systems as it begins to move northward towards Florida. Again, the very, very hot waters is going to provide tons of fuel to Hurricane Idalia, which will definitely allow for rapid growth as it moves towards Florida, and will definitely allow for it to impact the Gulf side of Florida as a Category 3 hurricane by Wednesday. And you can see there are tons of warnings across Florida right now. Florida does look like it is lit up like a Christmas tree. We have warnings for storm surge. We have warnings for hurricanes. We have watches for hurricanes. We have warnings for tropical storms. We even got watches for tropical storms. And as for our storm surge, there is a huge factor that is going to play into this. On the day that Hurricane Idalia is expected to impact Florida, it is expected to be a supermoon on that day, which will allow for the possibility of much higher tides across this particular location, and lead to, again, much higher tides and much higher storm surge, which will definitely allow for major impacts in terms of storm surge across the coastal regions of Florida, as well as the threat of high winds with this Category 3 hurricane. However, with the supermoon and the very high tides that are expected to be with this, storm surge is going to be a major threat for the Gulf side of Florida and coastal regions of Florida as this does begin to approach Florida the next couple of days, mainly on Wednesday. Taking a look at our precipitation that is expected to be with this system as it begins to move northward and impact Florida over the next couple of days. I don't really have access to all that much information like the day that it is expected to impact Florida because of this barrier here that is preventing me from going any farther. However, with very large amounts of rainfall, with just Category 2 Hurricane Idalia at this time, this current scan, you can see that we are expected to have intense amounts of rainfall, lots and lots of rainfall, with it getting into those double digits, and you can see that is expected to continue as it begins to become a Category 3 hurricane and impact Florida, leading to tons of flooding, and combined with storm surge, we are expected to have tons of flooding across the Gulf side of Florida in areas that are going to be impacted by Hurricane Idalia. So again, if you live in these affected areas, please stay weather alert for the time being, as we are expected to see tons of flooding with storm surge and rainfall over the next couple of days, not only with the outer bands of Hurricane Idalia, but with Hurricane Idalia itself on Wednesday. Tons of flooding is expected across the impact location of Hurricane Idalia. So again, if you do live in those affected locations, please stay weather alert over the next couple of days. Taking a look at our 500 millibars, I am going to be taking a look at our 500 millibars not for triggering factors, but for our wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico. If you didn't know, wind shear plays a major role in the upscale growth of hurricanes. Wind shear is kryptonite to hurricanes, as it will tear apart a hurricane, and you do not want wind shear if you want a hurricane. So if you don't want a hurricane, then you do want wind shear. And you can see with that high pressure system that was expected to be lingering across the majority of the United States, preventing a lot of the jet stream from getting down into the southern United States, that very large and very intense high pressure system that has been affecting our weather the last couple of days, that is going to play a role in the upscale growth of Hurricane Idalia, as it will keep the jet stream or any subtropical jet or anything that could lead to increased wind shear across the Gulf of Mexico. So we aren't expected to see any wind shear prohibiting the development of Hurricane Idalia as it begins to encroach on Florida here. So without wind shear being there to slow down its development, we are expected to see, again, a rapid upscale growth in intensity with Hurricane Idalia, with the intense water temperatures that we had, and again the lack of wind shear. We again are expected to see a major upscale growth, allowing for it to get to a Category 3 hurricane by the time of impact. And The reason why I did say I was wrong towards the beginning of today's forecast, before this category 3 status was added by Wednesday, was because I wasn't expecting, I didn't take into account the temperatures or the wind shear for the upscale growth of Hurricane Idalia, and that is a flaw on my part. And I will definitely do better with forecasting hurricanes and take into account the full story. So I'm glad that I figured that out. And with that now being said, I can now accurately see what's going on. So again, with the lack of wind shear and the intense temperatures that we have, major upscale growth will be expected with Hurricane Idalia, which will allow for it to impact as a Category 3 hurricane by Wednesday. And then taking a look at the severe thunderstorms for the marginal threat across the southern United States, I am going to be skipping right to instability. I'm not going to be taking a look at dew points or temperatures. However, for the storms that are expected to be across this marginal threat region, they are expected to be continuously triggered by that front that we have seen the last couple of days, triggering these severe thunderstorms for the southern United States. And it is expected to do it again today, triggering this marginal threat. And you can see the instability across this region is going to be fairly strong, getting into the 3000s and the 2000s, which will definitely support the possibility of damaging winds. But with the high pressure system continuing to stay in place across this region, organization of storms is going to be fairly limited, as well as severity. Severity is going to be limited, as well as organization is limited, keeping down our threat mostly to a marginal threat with that 5% wind threat. And again, with that high pressure system, without the jet stream across this region, we aren't really expected to see all that much of a possibility for any of our shears, including directional or speed shears. So we shouldn't see the possibility of tornadoes or hail at all for this particular location, just damaging winds for the time being. Now that I've told you the weather, please go down to the description and check out the socials for Project Gladiator, and join the Discord for any updates on Project Gladiator. And make sure you are checking out those socials for any updates on Hurricane Idalia, and make sure you are checking out for any updates on Hurricane Idalia from any certified sources, because I'm not a certified source. Please make sure you are watching out for any updates for Hurricane Idalia from stations like the National Weather Service. However, I will also be posting updates on Hurricane Idalia, but it's better to be listening to those certified sources, because again, I'm not a certified source. So if you do live in these affected areas, again, watch for updates, and please stay weather alert for the time being, and hopefully I will be able to see you guys tomorrow with another forecast.